Hello everyone, this is Owlbear from Mesa Mundi. I'm here to talk to you about D20PRO and where we're at with our Shadowcasting work, as well as a couple of other pieces of interest that we've been working on. Alright, so D20PRO is our virtual tabletop solution, predominantly for playing role-playing games, but can be used for board games or any other sort of tabletop shared experience type of application. Right now I've got our setup configured for a D&D game. We've got a monk character over here who's been wandering around exploring a dungeon. You can see his light source is revealing the areas that are within line of sight for him. And let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. So this is the second time that we've talked about the system, so I'll try to be brief in covering some of the things we've already talked about before. But to start with, we have a couple of different kinds of objects that can exist on the map to work with lights. So obviously light sources themselves are an object that can now be bound properly to a character. In this case, I've got two light sources attached to this one character, giving him a bright illumination circle and a dim illumination circle. This is predominantly just a mechanical aid, I should say, to allow for the GM and players to properly manage their creatures and tokens and what they want to do. So for instance, I could have this creature over here remain hidden, so we'd say invisible. And if this creature had made his stealth check, there's no reason for the player here to have noticed this creature yet, whereas this one over here, maybe he didn't make a stealth check and so therefore he's visible. Generally speaking, if you're not worried about that kind of thing, or later on when we actually have some automated die rolls for your creatures, you'll be able to stay in dynamic mode, and what will happen is that when the player's light challenges the creature could automatically make a stealth check to see if they are displayed or not. But for now, that's still a manual process, and light sources will reveal a hidden creature the same way that in our previous iteration before Shadowcasting, revealing a Fog of War area would reveal a hidden creature. Alright, so let me show you a little bit about the lights. So we've got a handy-dandy light panel. The light panel lets us see which lights are attached to a creature. So in this case, we have the 10th level monk, who is lovely nameless in this regard, has a sun rod with an inner and an outer radius. These are names that we apply to them. Just double click and it pulls up our light editor. You can change the name, you can change whether or not the light is enabled or disabled, public or not public, and I'll explain what that means in a moment. You can set a fill color, you can set a ring color, and both of these actually supply an opacity as well. So you can set the color and opacity for any light source. Right now we are not supporting textures, but that is in the works. In addition to the fills, you have owner and tether. Owner is the creature on the map that owns the light source, and this owner can actually exist across maps. So if you've got more than one map available, then the owner can exist anywhere in your active play space. And then tether is who this light is attached to. And tether can be a creature, it could be an object, it could be anything within the current map that you're on. So when you tether, you have to be tethering to a creature on the existing map. This allows for some simplicity in terms of when you're assigning lights. The predominant case is certainly doing it on the map you're actually on, rather than trying to cast lights into a map that you aren't actually, present. So with a large list, such as the one we have here, we can actually use the filter, and I could say, hey, do I have a ranger out there? Or, type any letter, and it automatically sorts, gives me the list, tells me who's who, and whatnot. So once a light source is attached, you'll be able to use this magnifying glass here to demand focus. This will actually move your map on the GM view over to where the light source is actually attached or placed on the map. So if you've got a light that's just sitting out here, such as this one, this light source is, you know, it's just sitting here, I can move the thing around, whatever I want. Let me turn it on. And so what we're seeing here is the node for the light source, but we're not seeing the effects of the light because the region that the light is in is actually marked as hidden or not shown. Let me show you what I mean. So if we go into here to visibility and we toggle the visibility on this region from show to hide, vice versa. So in this case, what we've done is we've taken this is a hide region, now it's a show region. It's the same thing as clicking on the stuff here. So with that done, now if we go back over to the light menu, you can see as I move this light source around, it casts light through. There's a little bit of problem still with these column objects. Basically, lights work pretty well for these kind of objects. These are edges, and I'll go into that in a moment as well. This section of the map is a bit of legacy, so these need to be replaced with the new object type, which are doors. And let me go ahead and put this guy right back here on my statue, put him back into a disabled state, and now let me go over here. Oops, let's grab that. So let's talk a little bit about visibility, so public and not public, and for light sources. But let me show you first, from the GM side, you have the capability to manage lights on any creature from a context menu. So we've added a light menu, and you can see that these two lights are attached to this creature, inner and outer. These are default names, so if you use the create light and you create a light with a dual radius or single radius, you'll have an inner and an outer named light that is attached to the creature and owned, tethered and owned by the creature who you click on to do it. So for instance, if we come over here, and we take this guy and let's give him a 5-foot light. So he now has his own 5-foot light named inner. We could rename this to be, inner ranger, so that way he's just emitting his inner ranger, and there you go. So if we now refresh, we'll see that this gets pushed out to the players, and the players are both able to see it. However, let's say that he has the weakest version of dark vision you've ever heard of. He can only see 5 feet with it, but it's his dark vision, so nobody else can see by it. So it's not going to be public. So if we take this creature and give him ownership by player 1, who is the guy down here, and we refresh it, you'll see that player 1 is able to see by this light source, but player 2 does not see that light source. So if we take this again and we'll say dark vision, and let's set it to a radius of 6, which is 6 times 5, so 30, which is half of actual dark vision. You now have this creature able to see and manipulate and interact with the space using its dark vision, but it's nobody else is able to see by that creature's light. So this allows you to model vision types. You can have you're not limited to 2. You could put a creature's vision in addition to a light source. You can stack a whole bunch of lights on top of a creature. You can also have lights that exist in a map where there is no creature. So let's say that we put in a dancing light, and we're just going to say that it's got a radius of 2 game units, and it's got a color of yellow. We'll say give it red and make it a little. There we go. No owner. And so now this light exists here. If we select it, interesting. There. So now we can actually drag the thing around. Obviously, that's a bug that we'll have to fix. So let's move right on to talking about some of these object types. Let's go to doors. All right. So as let's actually go ahead and delete this one. So we have our door objects. You can see here that I've actually attached a couple of doors over top of where the doors would actually exist in this map. If we bring this back here, that'll update everybody. I toggle the visibility. You can actually close the doors, and you'll see that things are, light blocks, stops right at the door. If I bring this guy forward, his light will also sit here, be blocked by the door. If I then toggle visibility, so I'm clicking on the Fog of War button and clicking on the door, when I push that to the players, now light sources will pass in both directions. So this creature's light source passes outward, revealing the character outside. This creature's light source passes inward, revealing the creature inside. As well as this creature is carrying light sources that are actually public. So if we go into his lights, he has two light sources in inner and outer, visible and public. Visible, just to cover that quickly, just simply turns it on or off. So this is a pure, I want to have a light source on this creature, character, however, but it's currently hidden, it's off, but I want to have easy access to re-enable it. So this way you don't have to go through and reconfigure a light source between sessions. The light source can just remain. So if you've got a character who casts daylight all the time, or has a sun rod, or a torch, or something like that, it's pretty straightforward. So if we wanted to open up the other door, we just click on it again, and now you'll see that both doors are open. As this character moves around, let's give him ownership on player. Yeah, player one's fine. Okay. So as he moves around, his light source changes. As soon as his light touches the square where the other creature's standing, that creature becomes visible. All right. So doors are interesting because unlike traditional Fog of War objects, who when you toggle visibility, the visibility will toggle through to any objects underneath. So for instance, here where we've got some overlap, this will actually toggle the visibility on both of these objects, this wall and this hallway. Doors are a unique object where it only toggles the visibility of the door. So if the door is visible, if the door is in a hide state, meaning that it is currently closed, when you click on it, it will move to an open state. And then once in an open state, it behaves like other Fog of War objects. This is a little confusing at first, but what we found is that in testing, this is a very functional way to handle the doors, because when you want to close the door, very often you actually want to hide the content on the other side of the door at the same time. And so you can use the click and drag action, which D20PRO has had for a long time, to manage multiple Fog of War zones at the same time. So this way you don't have to go through click and click and click and click and click. You can just go through and drag, click around. This way you get the behaviors you're looking for. So this is still being refined, but I think this gives you a fairly basic idea about what we're doing with the Fog of War and the doors. And and so you can see where you can have multiple light sources, multiple things going on. So as this character moves forward over here, and we open this door for them, he sees the evil rogue down the hallway waiting for him. Another interesting thing that we can do, you may have noticed over on a little bit earlier, we walked up to some portcullis. That again was using sort of an older technique to create the portcullis. With the new door system in place, it's actually quite functional to simply use doors, and you can draw your objects as doors with pretty much any type of polygon. And then this gives us the capability to have bars, things of that ilk, and manage them using the visibility just like you would a door. So this monk comes up and he breaks some bars down and then is able to go through. You're able to keep the other bars in place and actually create a nice effect. This isn't necessary, it's theater of the mind, but the overall look and feel of this is quite pleasant. Let me jump over to one of our other maps. We'll go over to our handy dandy studio basement, which is one of our default maps. So let's look at our ownership here. We've got player 2, which is the top one here, owning this wizard, and player 1 owns the rogue down below. So you can see the rogue as he moves around, his light source moves, and as the wizard moves, again, his light source moves. Here what we've got is proper use of our edge objects. So edge objects have the ability to see the content inside of the object while still casting shadow beyond it. So that means that as we move around, you're able to see these columns, allowing us to actually interact with the artwork on the map and still provide shadow casting for handling visibility and content of that ilk. Another neat feature of the lights that is definitely worth noting is you can actually attach light sources to objects. So first of all, let's take this. Also worth noting, the lights, for instance, this light source here is actually owned by this wizard. So this maybe is like fairy fire or glitter dust or something like that. And so, it's stuck to the guy and traveling around with him, but it's actually owned by the wizard. So the wizard is able to always see this light source no matter what this character's visibility is, which is super handy. So this basically allows you to handle invisible creatures who you've attached a light source to that that goes beyond that. All sorts of scenarios that you can come up with. It's kind of fun. You can also go in and change this. So let's go ahead and change the tether to be on this torch, which currently is actually just a staff, and we'll give the ownership. So the whole thing is owned and operated by the torch. So the torch is over here in the darkness, meaning that it's in the wall. So let's go to library, and we're in items. And now if we drag this thing onto the map, you'll see that the torch is illuminated and is visible to both characters. Unlike creatures, items on the map are considered GM owned, and their lights are generally going to be public. There isn't a right-click context menu to get to lighting for an object, for an item. So you have to use the game tools right now to manage the visibility of the lighting. So if we turn that off, it's going to disappear for both the players, which probably isn't the actual scenario you're looking for, because you might as well just disable the light at that point. So generally, it's a publicly owned item because it's out in the world and unattended, and therefore you end up with light sources like this. So one of the pieces of logic we're working towards is actually allowing you, as you come in and a creature moves forward, let's say he comes down here, and then he's going to pick up the item. He's going to pick up the torch. So he picks up the torch and picks it up. Right now the light is destroyed. The logic here will be that light sources attached to an item become attached to the creature who picks up the item. So this way, when you pick up a torch, it stays lit and you wander off with the torch. In the meantime, though, it's very straightforward for the GM to just come in here and say, hey, I need to put that 5-foot light back on this guy. And when I push, he's now got his 5-foot light. So from this menu, just to very quickly go over the menu, you've got your visibility, public, your, let's go and set those. In addition, your create, and we've given you a pretty wide range of options. Right now, this is hard-coded in. Down the road, as we work on our plugin system, you'll be able to configure these values yourself from a text file and create new light sources or new types, or even change grid units. So for instance, this is create and it's using grid units. So, this is 5 foot by nothing, so it's only one radius. In here, unfortunately, right now, we're still using the number of grid units rather than the translation of grid units. This will get updated as well before we release, so that way they're the same. The other option off of the light menu is the clear all. Clearing all literally goes through, deletes all the lights from the creature, and removes them from the map. So then when I push, oops, I missed. When I push, this actually updates, and you can see that those lights are gone. And if that was an error, then we can just simply come back in, add them back, and push again. And there you go. So those are the core changes for Fog of War and lighting. One of the more interesting facets is the ability to mix and match between the old style of Fog of War and the new Fog of War. So for instance, if I go in here and I select this wall region, which is this big circular area around it, that I'm just using to sort of block out all the spaces outside. If I go through and I change it from interactive to passive, this is what this IP stands for. I will apologize now for the soup of buttons here. We are absolutely working on fixing this up in a major way, but for the time being, this is the quickest way to get something out for everybody to start to use and test with. So if I switch from interactive to passive, that's this column here, and these will get a new icon shortly. So interactive, passive. When I refresh, if I now disable that area, you'll see that on the player maps, just like the original Fog of War system, which was zones, sort of like the lifting paper, putting paper down, this area is now completely toggleable between either all on or all off. What's cool is that when we mix and match our parts like this, we can actually have outdoor regions and indoor regions that that still allow us to see our lighting, still interact with light, but allow for much more interesting visualizations. So let's move our rogue out here as well. So, so we've got our party outside, and they're spelunking, or, they're searching around, and they come across this building down in the Underdark, and they can try to find a way in, right? And so, unfortunately, I didn't actually model a way in, but let's say that they find it here, they go in, and adventure starts. So this is a very nice combined way to handle overland or large areas, in addition to being able to put in blocked out areas and things like that. The last thing I want to add about lighting is going to be that at this time we have not modeled an anti-light, sort of a darkness, in a way that interacts with lights according to the rules. So we don't have a light that counters darkness, and we don't have a darkness that counters light. It's something we're investigating, and we'll definitely be working on more as we move forward. But for the time being, we want to make sure that we've nailed the basic lighting model and get this out into people's hands and let them start actually experiencing the system. So in addition to lighting, and in addition to the Fog of War, we have done a couple of bug fixes. The first and foremost one is we've corrected the long-standing bug where in edit mode, snap to not wasn't functioning correctly if you started from the mold or manipulate mode. With this in place now, it's very easy to go through and build walls, build edges, build masked out areas, and get your Fog of War going. In addition to being able to go through and build out doors and odd shapes and everything, and then have them all link up and leave no gaps. We've had some interest in being able to alter fonts, and certainly that is something that we are excited about. And so what we've done is we've actually created a chat font selection and a user font selection. So the user font is your global font, and it's used if you change your user font to something. This font will be used in just about every location you can imagine. So if we go into, let's take medium, and this won't take effect until I launch a new instance, but you can set a user font, which will replace the UI fonts, it'll replace the menu fonts, any place where you have a font that is not absolutely required that it has a fixed size, this user font selection will replace it. If you then also select a chat font, you can, this will only affect the chat window. And if we go in and choose, let's do Moto Sans TTF. There we go. So that font will only affect the chat window. So that will update from what you see here to a nicer, cleaner looking chat window. Here we are. I've launched a third player instance, or a fourth instance of D20PRO on this machine, where now you can see that we have a nice, clean looking font here. And if we click on the OK button, it will launch a new player instance. And so now here we have a nice, clean, crisp, modern font available for our messages. You can see our chat log is using a much more legible font as well. If we go into the menu is significantly different with a bolder, cleaner, easier to read font as well. So this is a fairly significant change. There's a lot of chance for there to be some sideways errors, if you will. So definitely, if you're playing around with the fonts, let us know if you come across anything, and we can move from there. So some of the other changes that we've implemented, we're working on a skinning system. So right now the skins are pre-built, but this is all part of where we're headed, is a full UI redux. Right now, the art for the skin that I've been using for this demo is a sample of one of the skins we're working on. This is based off of some work by Evil, who is a very good UI artist who we've used for some mobile applications in the past. And so it's one of the skins that we have access to. The skinning is certainly going to be interesting. We're slowly moving towards building out a system that will allow you to change that on your own during runtime. So you'll be able to go through and select a skin. Right now, we have to build them and then distribute them and then have you put them into specific locations. So we'll probably ship with at least one, possibly two skins when we actually get the skinning system initially moving. For now, this is where we're at. So then the next major change is actually in the ability to control the size of your icon in your mini view, right? So we've been doing some updates on our mini view. So first of all, you can actually minimize the whole thing. So if you want to use your mini view as your character sheet, this is super handy. This allows you to go through, get rid of the large icon, and just have the predominant character data, or the pertinent character data, immediately visible. You can click on elements here, of course, and they'll make rolls. You click on your saving throws, same sort of thing, you'll see the saves. So this way you've got quick access to calling up various character-related things. You want to make an attack, you can just click the choose attack, rather than you going through and using your menu or your keystrokes. In this case, what happened is I clicked on the character, pressed A, pulls up the attack menu, or I can click on this, pull up the attack menu. Or with the mini view, I can get to all of that very quickly. Additionally, you can use your skills. Again, a double click results in a skill check. We've had some requests regarding ways to handle chatting in character for better role-playing experience and things like that. And so what we've done is we've actually added a chat bar to the mini view. So if we minimize this, we can get a nice compact view of your character data, yet also be able to say whatever we want directly in character. And if you click on the say, you can change between the various types. You can use the do, the emote, the whisper, the yell. And so there you go. You can see yell works. If we go in and use do, again, same sort of thing with the emote and Whisper is, you can see that he is able to say and do just about anything in any of the types of in-character command types that we currently support. If you had more than one character that you owned, you would be able to go in and let's give ownership of this guy to player 2. And so now player 2 is able to say things in either of these characters' voices simply by selecting a tab in order to change which character they're speaking as. And there you go. Pretty much sums up the large portion of changes that are going into the 3.6, the immediate 3.6 release that's going in for testing. The other content that we have in the works is the creature templates for new character sheets and 5e rules plugins and other rules plugins, but predominantly 5e. We have extended the SRD to support direct access to the 5e rule system SRD. Currently, this is using the same 5e SRD, or it is using an SRD by the same guy who makes the Pathfinder SRD, and so it's a pretty good system. It does have ads, but everybody's gotta do their thing, and so this allows you to pull up SRD data either within the browser or directly. So if we wanted to say we do a search for dwarf, you'll see that we are able to actually get details on the 5e dwarf directly in a window inside of D20PRO. While right now the character sheet is certainly not 5e compliant, having access to the SRD data and access to the SRD class spells and feat lists as part of your character features is pretty much what we need in order to allow for current quick play of 5e games. So if you have any questions about how to set up your game or set up your D20PRO instance for 5e, if that's something that you want to do, we've got a forum thread running, which I'd be happy to post links to on the Kickstarter or to the YouTube video or whatever, that will let you know exactly how to load those manually specified files that enable some of the 5e style spells and feats to be accessible for character creation. And what I mean by that, just to be completely clear, is that if I go in here to feats and I say add, you can see that there's amplified rage, sympathetic rage, various other things like this. These are actually specified in a resource file that is editable, and if you want to run 5e, then we simply change the resource file to specify the correct names for feats or class features or things like that, and then you're able to actually assign them to a character properly. So, and with that, I will bid you all farewell until next time. Again, this is Owlbear with D20PRO over at Mace Mundi. And have fun. Good gaming.